So, what word jumps out at you today? Of all the scriptures we heard proclaimed, what grabs your attention? Maybe it's devil or temptation, or maybe it's something else. The word that jumps out at me, therefore. Real exciting word, isn't it? Therefore. And of all that we just heard, that's what jumps out to me. The reason is that I think that it's the key to understanding how we are to live as Christians. And here's why. Do you know your history? I don't mean, do you know history? I mean, do you know your history? Do I know my history? Do you know that you've been saved? Do you know what you've been saved from? Do you know who did it? Do you know how? You and I spend time every day asking ourselves the question, how should I respond to all that has been done for me? You see, if we don't know our history, if we don't know our story, our identity, then life becomes something like an insolvable riddle. It's just some pursuit of maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. I mean, what else would there be to live for? But our Jewish brothers and sisters have a tremendous understanding of human nature. They especially have a tremendous understanding of how easy it is to forget. And so they've built into the rhythm of their lives a means by which they would be repeatedly telling their story, and that's what we hear in our first reading, or at least in brief summary fashion. The Jewish people, especially the task of the Jewish family, in particular the Jewish father and his wife, the mother of his children, to be intentional and deliberate in telling his sons and daughters the story of their people so that they would never forget what God has done. And what was their story? Well, they lived in Egypt. What were they doing in Egypt? We know that they were slaves. They had not gone there originally as slaves, but through a series of tragic circumstances became slaves. And they were slaves for 430 years. Just think of our own country. Think of the trauma and the scandal and the sin of slavery and what it's done to our country and what it's done in between the races in our own country. And now imagine a people who for 430 years had been slaves. Imagine their psyche, a life of being oppressed, maltreated. Their life was simply to be a living tool for the pharaohs. They could be tortured and killed on a whim. But then out of nowhere, or at least so it seemed to them, they were rescued. They were liberated, freed, saved by God with mighty deeds and literally, or quote unquote, outstretched arm. And so every year, over and over and over again, unless their children would forget this, the Jewish father, together with his wife, the mother of his children, would tell this story. Now, how about us? What's our story? How well do we know it? How intentional are we about retelling it? Our story is this. You had no hope. I had no hope. We weren't slaves to Pharaoh, some awful human tyrant. You and I had sold ourselves, thanks to the sin of our first parents, into slavery, to this figure who is no myth. He's very real, and his name is the devil. And he hates you intensely. And he hates me intensely and personally. He deceives, he lies, he kills. His desire is to get you and me into a pit however he can. He tries to isolate. He tries to get us to doubt that our Father is not a father, and he's not one that loves or cares for us, or is that he's even good. He seduces, he entices, he tricks, but he has one aim, and his aim is to kill us. We've been rescued from him. How? Not with a word, but with mighty deeds and quite literally outstretched arms. For that's how God saved us from this enemy. With his hands stretched out on a cross, out of love for you and out of love for me. Therefore, do you get it? You see, all of Christian life is a response. God has done all of this. Therefore, live this way. What's the first commandment? What's Jesus say the first commandment? He says it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind. But what's the first commandment when it's written down on the 10 Commandments? What is it in its entirety? I am the Lord your God who brought you out of slavery, out of Egypt, that place of affliction. Therefore, have no other gods before me. Why? Because no one loves you like I love you. No one frees like I free. No one liberates like I liberate. No one saves like I save. No one is possibly as powerful or cares for as much about you as I do for you. Therefore, put me first. That's the commandment. If I don't know that, then it just seems like rules. But it's not rules. It's a response. It's a response to that. And if I don't know the story, then really nothing makes sense. And so our question this week might be as simple as asking ourselves, what's my therefore look like? How well am I living my life in gratitude? So let's ask the Lord to increase our gratitude for all that God has done for us. And let's then hear again that story, our story, so that our therefore will be all the more enthusiastic.